hot.
Wake up, America. You've got a dog that needs walking. That's right, sunshine. Just put on a big pot of strong coffee and get ready to type your little hate mail with your opinions about kumbaya and flat earth insanity. Stand-up comedy? You want stand-up comedy? Well, we've got sit-down comedy. It's time for Coffee with the Dog. You make me laugh.
Well, that is the dream, to make you laugh. But it ain't gonna happen. So just cool your jets, get your expectations in order. It's Monday. You think I'm gonna make you laugh? No, you make me laugh. How about that? I think that would be better. You owe me one. At least. I think. What do I know? Good morning, folks. It is Monday, January 15th, 2024. Hope you're having a great day wherever you are. Hope you're nice and warm. Most of the country is experiencing some Arctic blast crap. I'm not sure. I lost track of how many days till spring. I'm guessing it's like 65-ish. But you know what? I look forward to it. Actually, it will probably start to warm up in the next, I'm going to guess, 35 to 40 days. That's what I'm going to get. At least here, where I am. And that's all that really matters, is where I am. No, I'm kidding, of course. I am kidding. It also matters where my wife is. But it doesn't really matter to me what happens in the middle of the country. I mean, as far as weather goes. We're all going to hell anyway. This year, I am predicting a very bad outcome for America because I do believe that this election that we are having will result in the end of America. I do believe that. I believe that from the bottom of my heart. Sadly, I don't want that, of course, but I don't see any way it can go good for us. And you know, I don't want to be an Alex Jones doomsday sayer or a Harold Camping. Was that his name? Harold Camping, the guy who predicted rapture like 15 times. The world's coming to an end, all that stuff, and never happens, and he just keeps moving the date back. Alex Jones is like that. For 30 years, Alex Jones has predicted doom and gloom, and it doesn't happen. He just moves the date back a little bit. I do think we're headed for terrible things. Even the best outcome of the election will probably lead to violence and quite a bit of unrest. Today is Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Not really his birthday. I believe tomorrow is his actual birthday. I forget about that. I think January 16th was his actual birthday. We used to celebrate it on his birthday, but then, like everything else, they moved it to Monday, unless you're in Arizona, where you don't celebrate it at all, which is a whole other story. Arizona's got to get over they got to get over what he was talking about. Now, for most of us, it's cold in here. This is why I got my Obi-Wan Kenobi on. For most of us, we know kind of the message of Dr. King. We know we know about I Have a Dream. Do we know the rest of the whole speech? It's quite a long speech. Probably don't. I think I might read it here today in its entirety. Sorry to do that to you, especially if you're a white guy, because it might make you upset again, just like it did in 1963 on a hot summer day, 2 days before my 4th birthday. It's important to recognize that when he gave that speech, America was like a very different place. Now, race relations in my lifetime have gotten better, but they've gotten worse again. Not to the point where they were in 1963, but there are some people, obviously, the Make America Great Again movement is about making things worse than they were in 1963, going back to 1953 or so, or even let's go back further than that. Let's go back to 1853. How about that? Um, and so I think they never really taught in school. They did the politically correct thing. Well, we got to teach that Martin Luther King's message of peaceful protest and progress was a good message. That's enough. Why bore the kids with the whole speech and what he really said and what it really meant? Why do that to these nice white boys and girls? I'm sorry, I didn't want. See, now that's my shortcoming, leaving out the feminine gender. Anyway, they never, even in my day, they never really taught that stuff. So if you're a younger person, I'm sure you never learned about this stuff. So I'm going to bore you with it today. Sorry. I know your day off. What I got to listen to this shit for? Because we are still dealing with it. And we're dealing with people who want to turn back the clock. That's what MAGA is all about, turning back the clock. And why? So I'm going to talk about that today. I am sorry if that's going to ruin your day, like it ruined the 60s for a lot of white people. For a lot of people. You know what? Martin Luther King's message of not being violent and doing bad deeds, I believe is the word he said, words he said, were lost on some black people as well. There was lots of race riots when I was in school. And listen, I shouldn't say lots, I know some black people, not fans of Martin Luther King, don't think he was radical enough. But we had race riots in my school right up until mid 70s. But as I said, things started to get better, started to improve, and then they didn't. And then they started to reverse again. And I have some theories about that. And one of them I'm going to tie into something that our friend Goldberg said on Facebook yesterday. And you probably say, well, what the fuck does this have to do with black and white race relations? Probably everything, in my view. I'm just going to read you what he said, and I'll come back to this at some point once the gentlemen are in, and we'll talk about this if they are so inclined. Goldberg said, let's get something straight. If I call you a Jew hater, I know you won't agree with me and validate it, but you do that quite well in your beliefs, words, and deeds. In other words, if I call you a Jew hater, you're a Jew hater, and that's it. End of story. If I label you as a Jew hater, you have to wear that label because I said so. I think that's dangerous. I think we saw that, and this is how it ties into the whole race relations thing and black-white issues in America. We saw that when Barack Obama was president. If you criticized Barack Obama in any way, you were a racist and a bigot and just doing it because he was black. Now, to be fair, there were a lot of white people who hated Barack Obama because of his race. But there were other people who were just not aligned with all his policies and felt like, I've been told I can't criticize his policies in any way, or I'm going to be labeled as a racist. And that's a tool we use to shut people up, to quiet them. Don't you dare criticize. Well, this is the same thing with the Jew hating thing. You can't be critical of Israel or Netanyahu or any Jewish leader. You can't be critical of them without being labeled a Jew hater, which is a dangerous thing. If you look at the case in Barack Obama's situation, what did that lead to? Led to President Donald Trump. That's what it led to, because enough white people did not want to be called racist just for disagreeing with him. Now, of course, the pure race, the people who were racist, just were on board with that anyway. And there were enough people who hated Barack Obama not because of his skin color, but because of his name, his Arab-sounding name. And I'm thinking about John McCain last night and how much I miss John McCain, even though I vehemently disagreed with a lot of McCain's ideas. I thought he was a warmonger and thought that the solution to everything lie in conflict, military conflict, rather than diplomacy. But I remember very clearly on the campaign trail when a woman started to call out Barack Obama the evil Muslim, and John McCain shut it down and said, no, this is not how we campaign. We've lost that in America. Donald Trump erased that forever, where a leader would stand up for the right way to approach criticizing your opponent rather than, go into racism and bigotry and all that kind of stuff. So this day is about really learning and relearning and discussing what we really are dealing with in America today and hoping, against hope, for a better outcome than I am expecting. Anyway, a gentleman who I'm sure is going to have some things to say about this discussion today, G.D. Fenderson, and a guy who would probably bring the positive energy even against what I just said, Wandering Willie. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
All right, it seemed like you're on not on delay, so
awesome.
It's a good morning then, yeah.
So far.
Good morning. Mind Dog Coffee. Today only. Free at last. Free at last.
Hey, wait a minute. No. No.
Use promo code. Use promo code. I don't want Caucus.
No, use promo code.
And 24. Mind Dog Coffee.
Use promo code GD is a fucking liar. That's what that's a promo code.
Well, are you saying just kidding? What?
Wow. You can get free coffee, but only if you're black.
Yeah, if you drink it black. You got that wrong. You missed that in the copy.
And you have to drink it black, dude. Yeah, that's right. That's good.
Yeah.
No, I was trying to do that without cracking my... I could not do that without laughing. I don't know why.
Well, thank you for that. But nothing is free. Nothing is free. There's no free lunch and there's no free coffee after lunch. Well, yeah. First of all, before we get into the shit that's going to bore people and anger some people, weather-wise, how you guys make out this weekend? You all right?
Oh, it's cold. It's cold. It's cold as a witch's pit.
No, Willie's wife is a witch. Maybe he can clarify. How cold is her kid?
He does not allow me. Okay, hang on a second. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because my hands get particularly cold, right? And so I will often try and warm them on her titties, and that is a no-go. Like,
wow.
Like I get yelled at for that all the time. Like the other day, I did manage to get it down her butt cheek a little bit. I got the icicle hand down the butt cheek, and that was wonderful. I got hit, I think, 4 times.
Down the butt cheek. Now, down the butt cheek should be your. If you're gonna split your careers, you shouldn't have a music name which is different than One Will See. And I think down the butt cheek might be perfect. Perfect.
Down the butt cheek.
Down the butt cheek.
Should be my other. Maybe that should be my band name. If I make a band, I should.
Yeah.
At least your first album. At least the name on your first album.
What about running down the inner thigh? I'd rather call it that.
All right, you can call it whatever you want. I just think that's a good band name for somebody. If you're not going to use it, somebody should. That's all I'm saying. Now,
I'm probably not using down the butt cheek, but I appreciate the sentiment.
You sent me, well, you didn't send me, but a link on your page sent me to your Star Maker last night, and I listened to you do what was standing in the fire or something.
Oh, standing outside the fire.
I don't know that song, but I listened to you do it, and then I went down the rabbit hole in Star Maker, and Oh my God, those people on Star Maker can't fucking
Some of them are
listen.
pretty bad.
As somebody who does not have a strong singing voice, or people might say, "Well, who are you to criticize people?" Well, I do know sharp and flat, and pitch wise, I didn't see one person on there who could actually stay on pitch or even come within like a microtone of the pitch they were supposed to be on. It was awful. Like they need some kind of auto tune for those people, or I think in the effects just fools them so much. It just sounds all like I'm
The
in a
effects
magical
can,
cave.
yeah, they
I have a
can. Go ahead, GD.
notice I have a question about Stormlight because I'm not familiar with it at all. But I know some karaoke songs are like in a slightly different key than the
Yeah,
original
yeah, that
song,
annoys
and
the shit out of me.
so some people actually are just singing. Maybe I don't know, are singing the pitch or the in the key of the original song when the karaoke version is like maybe instead of A and A flat or something
Right,
like
right.
that.
That can
I don't know.
happen for
I have
sure.
no idea because and
Doesn't
some
it?
people are just bad singers.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's anybody with perfect pitch, and that's who that would really affect. Is if you have perfect pitch and you're used to, well, it's in D and now it's in E flat, they can tell the difference. Relative pitch, those people are trying to get relative, and they hit one or two notes in a line that are in the right key, but still flat, sharp, all over the place, going up and down. So maybe there's some credence to that, but what it's just terrible. It's terrible.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't know.
it's definitely good practice, though. I mean, the reason I use it as much as I do is to train my voice to be able to handle singing, multiple days, long periods of time. Because if I don't do that, then if I start gigging, I'm going to do like 3 gigs and my voice is going to give out.
Yeah,
I don't want
let's
that.
be clear here. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the billion of other people on
Right,
there
right.
who they shouldn't. Practice is one thing. I don't practice out in public, and
Right.
I don't turn on a camera so the world can watch me practice. I practice in private so that when I go out and perform, it looks like, wow, he just plays that right. Well, it must be a natural. That's it. That's the goal. Anyway, hate to be that critical of them, but man, as somebody, I have a lot of tolerance for people like Bob Dylan, people who aren't necessarily great singers. But
Right.
when you're just like all over the map, like you've never even in tune ever, it really hurt. It's hurtful. And so I was
I
like, listen for like 2 measures of a song, go ow, and then the next one, and then
Yeah.
again, it was just that for like a half hour. I said, what am
Yeah.
I doing here? I'm just making myself angry.
I know that
Well, don't
years
look
ago,
at some of my older stuff. I tell you, oh my god.
years ago, I used to perform in a band, and uh, when it was my turn to sing lead, I had like no confidence. It just I had no confidence, and so my bass player says to me, who's your favorite band?" And at that time, my favorite band was XTC, and so he says, "You like Andy Partridge?" "Yeah, I like Andy Partridge." So he played a bootleg copy of a recording of Andy Partridge singing without the studio effect. And I said to him, I said, "Who's that?" He goes, "That's Andy Partridge." I said, "No, bullshit, man." He goes, "No, that's him." I said, "No, that's bullshit." He goes, "No, that's him." And I kept listening. I said, "No, that's the guitar player. That's the drummer. I can tell." No, and he goes, "No, see, you're not as bad." He says, "Andy, you sing better than Andy Partridge," which doesn't say I'm great, but it says that I sing better than Andy Partridge. And if
Right,
Andy Partridge can get out there and do this,
Did,
you can
right,
do this.
did that help your
right.
confidence?
It did help my confidence as long as I was singing XTC songs.
All right.
As long as I was covering, when we covered XTC songs, that felt great. But then we covered someone else, and I'd be like, or back then we only covered like half our songs are originals, half are covers.
Uh, Now
So
let's shift gears into the the thing that is going to ruin people's day and maybe make people tune out, but I want to talk about it, and that's Dr. Martin Luther King,
Now
Jr.
I did do a cover of one of his speeches back when I was younger. I did a cover version of one of his speeches back
A
when I was
cover version
younger.
of one of his speeches. Well,
Yeah,
I would not
it
attempt
wasn't
that.
exactly right. It wasn't exactly the same, but
Yeah, I would
like the
never
part.
attempt that because he had a very powerful voice, even though you can read the words, you'll never match the power and emotion that he was able to deliver. He was
Oh,
a
I wasn't
brilliant.
even. Yeah, I wasn't even pretending to match the power. This is a cover version. This is like my rendition. So
Ah.
like when he says, "I may not make it to the mountaintop with you," I'm like, "Fuck that! I'm going." Because I'm
Now
like, I don't
you
want to
don't see
die.
a lot of black people climbing mountains. I have to say that it's like
No,
Bigfoot.
it's back. Yeah, I've climbed three, and when I got to the top, I was the only black guy there. There was a bunch of white people, but I was the only black each time.
Uh,
And once is an occurrence, twice is a coincidence, three times that's a pattern.
yeah, yeah.
So
All right. Now Willie has the most recent memory of school days because he's younger. Willie,
Yeah.
when you were in grade school or junior high school or even high school, how much did they tell you? How much did you learn? How much
I
of the
mean,
curriculum was about Martin Luther King?
probably like a page. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's probably
how,
a page or two, maybe
how
three
big? Wait,
pages.
okay, but this makes a difference. How big were the pages and how small was the font? Because you can
Right,
cram a lot of information on a
right.
page if you get a small enough font and a big enough page.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I remember that, especially in Iowa, like they cover civil rights very quickly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like it wasn't anything that we spent a lot of time on. Like there wasn't like I have a dream uh readings done by students or anything. Um and not to say that it was, I can't, it's hard for me to say that I grew up in an overtly racist community because like it wasn't something that I thought about. Like I didn't grow up thinking black people were bad or anything like that. They just weren't around my part of the neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like my town didn't have people of color until like 12. I think I was 12 the first time a non-white family moved into Emmitsburg.
So it's impossible to have race riots when you only got one black kid in the neighborhood and
Yeah,
five
well, yeah,
thousand
and
white
like the
people.
Salas family, and to be honest, I'm still to this day, like I was friends with AJ and Sonya growing up, and I still don't know exactly what their heritage was because I think their dad was like part black and part Mexican, and their mom was like white and native, I think. Like
Right.
I don't even remember, but like I hung out with them every day, but it wasn't what any of us were concerned about. So it wasn't
Right.
what we
You know,
talked
well,
about.
easy enough way to tell is what they had in their refrigerator, what they served. So, had you ever been in
Yeah,
their
like
house?
I looked at other people's fridges and stuff. I don't know,
Well, we did that all the time. I'd be at my friend's house and I said, Abram, can I have some Kool-Aid? He goes, yeah, go to the refrigerator and get it. So
Yeah,
you
you
see
didn't do
what's in the
that. You
fridge.
didn't do that around the poor people I grew up with, man.
Yeah, they
So,
right.
That was an
What?
adult. It was an
Keep
adult's job to give you something from the fridge.
keep your hands off my bread, boy.
I
oh,
mean,
okay,
dude,
then
for real.
so what kind of food was on the table? What kind of food was on the table? I mean, you could tell
Table.
that my family. Oh, they had. Okay, never mind. I just want to make a note for people on 365 who are not benefiting from the video. In honor of Martin Luther King Day, I am performing in blackface.
Ah.
So just for the benefit of people on 365 who cannot
You
see,
know,
I am
every
I'm in
time this
blackface today.
I will say that I do have an old black friend that I think of every Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And it's a black dude a black dude that I knew whose name was Juan, and we used to work at this car wash together. And It was called K&H Car Wash, and the H in that was this guy named Harold, who was the dad, and he was an old racist guy. And Juan, though, was one of Harold's favorite black people ever, because Juan was the only black dude that Harold knew that would work on Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
Wow.
And like, so Harold just loved Juan.
Yeah.
Juan, however, scarred me greatly by inviting me to his house once. And that's all it took. I never went back. Because Juan was one of those weird ones where you could smoke weed in his house, but you had to go to the garage to smoke cigarettes. So we had went to his room and we had smoked some weed, and then we went out to the garage to have a cigarette. And it was an adjoining garage. It was connected to the house. And then all of a sudden, the door to the house opens and the screen door going into the garage opens. And here was his like 300-pound grandma opening the door buck fucking naked to tell Juan that he had a phone call. He's like, Juan, you got a phone call? And he's like, Grandma, I got company. You can't be coming out here naked. And I was like,
so if without company, it's okay to show him.
Right. Thank you. That's what I was like. What in the fuck about? I was like, why does company fucking matter? Is it like a regular thing that your grandma fucking roams around the house fucking naked? Like, that's not okay. That's not a thing that should be happening.
But if he grew up with it, he may not. To him, it may just be like a normal occurrence.
Yeah, it wouldn't even
or
at
least he's learned to just make eye contact. So he knows she's coming through the door. He knows she's coming through the door and she's 5'4". And so if you set your eyes at 5'2", you're going to make eye contact and you're not going to see the rest of it. But company wouldn't know not to look down.
For me, it would make me move out much younger. Even though I moved out at 14, I probably would have moved out at 11.
I mean, nothing was in the right place. I'll tell you that. Wow. It was disturbing.
Yeah.
See, your eyes weren't trained. It's like going into a museum and they tell you your eyes are not trained to understand this art. And you go like, this is a really crappy painting. This is a really shitty painting. And they look at you and say, you don't get that art.
It looked like wax art that had melted partially.
Now, you guys are not. Your purpose here is not to agree with me. We kind of touched on this just a little bit last week when I asked GD about something. And he said, I don't want to come off as like a yes man or whatever to you on the show, but I agree with you. But so if you disagree, I definitely want to hear it. But I want to know what your feelings are about what I said about equating Goldberg's comments. If I call you a Jew hater, you're a Jew hater. End of story. With the whole Barack Obama thing, where you were not able to criticize Obama without being labeled a racist on any grounds. Like if you were talking about, I don't know, Obamacare and saying there's a problem with it, he let the insurance companies write the bill. Oh, you're a racist. You just hate him because he's black. And people were intimidated. Now, I can't, if I say anything bad about Obama, I'm going to have to deal with this racist stuff. And it created a lot of anger among white people who were not naturally overtly racist. And created the world that we live in today, was part of where we got today. So this idea about telling people, if I say you are, that's it, end of story, that you must wear that label, I think that's a dangerous thing and probably terrible, one of the worst things that ever happened in this country. Your thoughts on that? Either one of you want to take it or disagree with me or anyway, or agree, anything.
I didn't agree with everything that former President Barack Obama did. I didn't agree with the way he negotiated. I thought he gave away too much in the beginning, like taking the public option off of the table before it was even like voted on. So yeah, I had my issues with him. And yeah, there were a lot of people who disagreed with him on policy, and at least it's in my neck of the woods where I am. It's 80% Republican. And so, whenever people discuss politics at my old job with me, that sometimes they just didn't give a fuck. It's like, look, you're only 20% of the population. Democrats. Well, actually, I'm not a Democrat. They just assumed I was. But you're only 20% of the neighborhood anyway, so fuck you. And so they would just say what they thought. They didn't care, you know.
Right.
Right.
So
But the
They
idea
didn't give a fuck.
that anybody who was white who did criticize Obama was labeled as a racist was a tool that people used to shut them up politically, whatever the motivation was. And people don't like to be told to shut the fuck up. Eventually, you tell them that long enough, they get angry. And I think that's what led us to the acceptance of Donald Trump, because a lot of people were like, "Yeah, this is what we need now. We can say whatever the fuck we want and not be labeled or something." Obviously, the opposite is true, because anybody who aligns themselves with Trump in any way is now labeled a racist. But I
and see,
think,
I
uh,
like people just I I like it when people speak their minds so we can find out where the hatred, where the crazies, where the allies are.
Right.
Just come out
Right.
and say, whatever it is. I don't care. Just say it so I can find.
Yeah.
The only danger that not the only danger. I'm pretty sure there's another one that I'm not thinking about right now. But at least the one that comes to mind is the people who say it just because they think that's what you're expecting them to say.
Right.
And then you assume that they're an ally or whatever, or you assume that they are not an ally, and you treat them as such. So I just prefer honesty. Just let me know straight up,
yeah.
because I can handle it. I can take it. But that's
Well,
just
Yeah.
again, that's just me. I don't speak for every black or brown person out there.
you
I just
don't.
speak for the ones. No, I just speak for the ones that live
Uh,
in my house.
well, we need to get a black guy on here who can speak for every black person. Where can anybody out
That
there
would be
wants to send
Irby.
him? Irving.
That would be oh
Ir-
no Irby. There's a Irby's not black. Fine. There may be another.
Uncle Walt.
Aaron Bullet.
Uncle Walt is
No,
the official spokesperson for the black people.
no, no, no. I'd
What
rather
about Uncle Parker? Let's get him.
I'd rather get Aaron Bullet. Aaron Bullet could be the spokesperson for all black people
All right, he's gonna
under
be on.
40.
He's gonna be on next
Under
week
40.
or two
Okay,
weeks,
then he can.
somewhere like that,
The
sometime this month.
black people under 40. Black people under 40. He can be the spokesperson for them.
Well, you got something to say about the what I said about the labeling, the Jew hater, black hater, whatever it is, wearing that label because you criticize somebody. What's your
Yeah,
take
I
on it?
mean, I don't really bend to that kind of stuff very often. Like if I were to say something derogatory about Obama or his presidency and you called me a racist, I'd laugh in your fucking face. Like because and I mean that has happened. That kind of thing does happen for sure. I recognize it as something that is definitely a tactic. Um, but like I don't give credence to that because like if that's your knee-jerk reaction to me expressing my opinion that's got nothing to do with race, then I know where the problem lies. And
Right.
it's not with me or what I'm saying. It's in whatever pea brain is trying to call me a racist for having an adverse opinion. You know what I
Well,
mean?
I want to say that Steve Goldberg has been on the program twice or maybe three times. I like him. I think he's a good guy. And I will say that I don't
Is he
know.
one of the good Jews? Is he one of the good
No,
Jews?
he's a good guy.
Oh, okay.
What his
Good guy,
see,
bad Jew.
I don't understand. I don't understand Jewish culture enough to even have a real strong opinion on it. 'Cause I don't even understand how you can be a religious Jew or an atheist Jew and still be a Jew. Like you couldn't do that with being a Christian. I don't
I
understand
think
it.
it has to do with who your mother is.
Maybe.
And also, some people think of being a Jew as a race, and some people think of being a Jew as a religion.
Right. So
So
Right.
my point is
Right.
it's too complicated. I don't understand it, and I definitely don't understand the roots of the Jewish, Arab, Palestinian conflicts and all that deep enough to really be critical of either. I mean, obviously, I don't like terrorists, and I don't like when people who just attack with regard to anybody and everybody civilians. I don't like war. I wish war and that kind of conflict, but I'm a realist and I know it's not going to go away. But if it's going to happen, it should be only between people fucking wearing a uniform, people who signed up for it or were indoctrinated into it or whatever. But when you take it to civilians, that's a whole other level. And I don't understand it, but to tell me that I have to agree with Netanyahu, Bibi, or if I have to agree with the Israeli government on everything, or I am a Jew hater, that's
Yeah,
just
this
going to
is
make
dope.
me angry. That's going to make me
Yeah.
opposed to you. You can't just you label me that because and tell me that I'm not allowed to have an opinion now about Israel or Netanyahu or any leader, any Jewish leader. I'm not allowed to have an opinion about what that person says or does. If I do in any way, you're going to label me a Jew hater, and then I'm going to have all these people thinking, people coming against me, like, oh, you're pro-Palestinian. No, fucking, I don't know enough about all this stuff. I don't like the idea of the pro-Palestinian protests that are going on here. And I don't know if you saw this the other day, but they tried to break into the White House. They were trying to take down the fence and breach the White House. I think Saturday night, and I thought, well, those people should all
That's
be
smart.
carpet bombed.
That's smart. I mean, after January 6th, you think they're going to be what, more tolerant of people trying to get in?
No, yeah,
It'd
yeah,
be totally different. It'd be totally different if January 6th hadn't happened. Maybe people would have been, the Capitol Police would have been caught off guard. But now, if you get like 12 people standing near the fence, they're gonna like, okay, are you lock and loaded? I'm lock and loaded. Okay,
right.
Phaser set on stun.
But coming back to the bigger point, I think the idea of saying if I call you, let's just say if you called me a racist and call me a racist and said if I call you that, you're it. End of story. No discussion. I
That's
think
so
that's
dumb.
yeah, that's incredibly dangerous. A place that is just saying we have to be in a state of war. There is no diplomacy here. We can't ever learn to get along. We can't ever learn to coexist. I just labeled you that because I say so. That's what you are.
Now,
Well, and like
what if they
what
say? Go ahead, Willie.
yeah, how is it that one particular person or even a group or whatever, how can that person be the like end all be all of who gets labeled or not? That alone is ridiculous.
Right. But I think
Who gets to be the decider? Like
That
you don't get
that
to
depends on how
decide
many.
that.
Well, it's kind of like a card game. Okay, the person with the most followers wins the argument. So when two people are arguing, they go like, "This is what I say," and I have 9,700 followers on TikTok. And they'll go, "Yeah, but I have like 1,400 or 14,000 on YouTube." So it depends on how many followers you have and on what format you're arguing.
I try to keep because again, I like Goldberg. I think he's a good guy, a good man. Um, and I try to see it from his point that he's been hurt by people who are legitimately anti-Semitic. And so his fallback position is if you're against Israel, who he puts a lot of loyalty. I don't know if loyalty, but his ties to his identity are with the Jewish state. And so if you criticize them, his fallback position is you must be anti-Jew or a Jew hater or whatever you want to
Right.
call it. And so I understand with his proclivity to go there and assume that. But once you tell somebody that's your label and end of discussion, I had a guy, and it's coming back to Martin Luther King. I had a friend who was a good friend, Obi Kwan. I'm wearing my
Kenobi.
Obi-Wan Kenobi thing today. The Force be with you. Um, Obi was a musician friend of mine on Facebook, and we supported each other a lot, and we were good friends. And on Martin Luther King Day, about 12 years ago, he wanted Facebook to ban an account because the account said "Happy James Earl Ray Day," And he said, "Well, that guy's a
That's
total
terrible.
racist." Well, I don't. That's his. That was his fallback position. I said that doesn't necessarily make him a racist because Martin Luther King Jr.'s own family believed in James Earl Ray's innocence and still believes in James Earl Ray's innocence and think he was a patsy. I don't necessarily agree with that. But there are people who are not necessarily racist who are behind the cause of James Earl Ray's innocence and I was just trying to make the case that just because somebody says a word like that, you can't say, well, they should be banned and they should be shut up for life. You didn't even engage them in conversation to find out if he's truly a racist or because you can believe that James L. Ray didn't kill Martin Luther King, but still a white guy did it for racial reasons, or the government set a white guy up for a racial reason. It was the roots of the crime were about racism without it being necessarily that. And maybe that person was one of those people who were anti-government saying and expressing it in a wrong way. So Obi defriended me for life and branded me a racist for even having that discussion. And that's how it ties to me all into this whole thing that we're experiencing.
Now, I used to, I still do it from time to time. One of my when I'm vamping on stage, one of my complaints about young people is that they don't know their history. And to prove it, I would just talk about like there's how many of you remember when James Earl Jones shot Martin Luther King? Okay, and now of course
If you shoot him, he won't come.
So I would say
that's a much better reference for James Earl Jones, by the way. The fucking Field of Dreams rather than Star Wars. I love that you went that direction. That's fucking great.
So I would joke, I would just go through that route and I wouldn't correct. I would just keep saying that James Earl Jones was the one that shot Martin Luther King. And I'd wait for someone in the audience to correct me.
The problem is with me, I would say that and not even realize I had the wrong James Earl. And like with Ethan Hawke, I think I probably would have went on with Ethan Hawke if Dave Landau had not caught me saying, well, Ethan Hawke, was he on the show? And oh, wait a minute, did I say Ethan Hawke? I meant Ethan Klein, but I would just go on with that until somebody corrected me. So and not even realize I was making that mistake. But the whole thing about just shutting people down and branding them before you've ever had a conversation with them, and wanting them not just that. You can block them so that you don't see them. But to go to Facebook and insist that Facebook take their account down because they said something you don't like. It's like, are we there? Are we at a place where we are all too sure of ourselves that we are right about everything, and we don't want anybody else to even have a voice or express themselves? I think that,
I mean, there's a lot of people like that. There's I have noticed more and more and this is why I've gotten to where I don't try talking sense to senseless fucking people. Because people that talk like that, people that draw those, that use those broad sweeping strokes like that, I don't really talk to them because, like, if you can't engage in a personal conversation to find out what I actually think about things, then I don't give a shit what your label is or your opinion is. I don't give a fuck about any of those things. You don't even want to know what I believe. You want to assume what you think I believe based on one or two minuscule things or whatever, and then you want to paint like a detailed picture of who I am or what my beliefs are based on this one fucking thing. You're out of your fucking mind. I'm not going to allow you to do that to me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So go ahead, GD. No, I'm gonna.
Just a few years ago. This is back when I used to live in the Baltimore area. When I used to live in another town, we were getting contractors to work on our house and work on a rental property. and I was there waiting for the workers to show up. And one of the workers, one of the conditions I had was that all the workers be legal. I don't care, just I don't want didn't want any, I want everybody to be legal. But I didn't think about anything else other than that. And so one of the workers shows up and he's wearing a Confederate flag T-shirt. And so when he came up, and I looked at him and I said, "Wait right here." And I called the foreman over. The boss said, "He cannot work on my property wearing that shirt." I said, "I don't care what you think. I don't care what your belief is, but you're not going to rub it in my face. So that shirt has to
Right.
go." So, and I looked at the guy, and then I said, "So your shirt has to go."
Then he took
And
it off
and
and he rubbed it in your face. The shirt.
exactly to prove a point. And so, but I appreciated his honesty, and so I doubled his share of the money.
Well,
No,
here's the
no,
other thing that I mean, you're assuming that the guy really understands what that shirt means because
right. Right. Actually, that's where I was going to go before you said about him taking off the shirt, rubbing it in my face. I asked him. I said, "Do you know what that shirt even represents? Do you know what do you know about that shirt?" And it turned into like a lecture, and I'm sure he was like, "Dear God, I don't want to
Right.
work here
Like I
if I
did
have to
not think
listen
this
to a
was going to
lecture."
happen at
Right.
work today.
But he was right. He says, I don't mind shoveling shit, but I'm not going to listen to a lecture."
yeah, no, I get that.
But
His
hey, I want to say to you, kudos to you for like drawing that line and having that boundary and asking someone to respect that, because I don't think there's anything fucking wrong with that. I think more people need to pipe up and say shit about things like that do bother them. You know what I mean? Because some people don't know. Some people are wearing things like that in a malicious way, and then other people really aren't. You know what I mean? Because I didn't know, I did not have any clue how hardcore some of these like Confederate type people were. Like I had a roommate for a minute that literally told me that he believed that the South was going to rise again, that black people were going to be forced back into slavery and shit like that. I was like, bro, I don't even think you've ever had a conversation with a black person then, because I'm telling you what, that ain't never gonna happen, bro. Like, not a fucking snowball chance in hell will slavery in America be a fucking thing again. Like, fucking, you've never like any black person that I've ever fucking talked to, like, there would be, you can't even imagine the resistance, the level of resistance to that, but and rightfully so, by the way. But like,
well,
to me, it was unfathomable that
you
people
think
would
there were
think that way.
just to play the devil's advocate for a second here? You think there was no resistance in the first to slavery to begin with? There was resistance. Nobody
Right. Yeah.
complied. Yeah, I want to be a slave. Take me. No, there
Well,
was
I think that I mean, I would imagine, and who knows, it's not like I was there, it's not like I have any idea, but I would imagine that there was probably a lot of falsehood in the beginning of opportunity or this, that, whatever, oh, we're gonna,
I don't
you
think
know
that being in chains on a boat, there's like this
no
yeah,
negotiation
but
about it.
I mean,
right.
even to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
them
I'm
that,
pretty
yeah,
sure they're going like,
right.
look, we're taking you by force, but you're going to a better place.
I mean, I have no
No,
idea. I have no idea what they said to those people. You know what I
They
mean?
didn't say
Like,
anything.
I think the chain said it all. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I was
probably.
I I used to work at a place that rhymes with Comcast, and one of the guys I worked with was a good old boy, a good old boy. I'm not going to mention his name because he has a good heart, and I think what he said may have been just. I'll tell you what he said. I went to a Christmas party with the woman I was living with. I was an attractive black woman, and he was like so enamored with the way she looked. The next business day when we were working together, he said to me, he goes, "Glenn, he goes, don't take this the wrong way, but your wife, actually she was my girlfriend, your wife is really, really hot." And he goes, I would love. He says, I wish slavery was back just so I could have sex with her. So
What the
Don't
I,
take
I
that the wrong way.
right now I'm not. So I looked at him, and because he prefaced it with that way, I said to him, I said, and I'm not going to say his real name, but I'm going to say, I looked at him, I said, really, you would enslave all of my people just so you could have sex with my girlfriend? Why didn't you just do what I did and buy her flowers and take her to dinner? You know,
right?
Bought
I
you
said,
I just
flowers.
why?
swooned
I said,
her for
yeah.
fuck's sake.
I said, yeah. Why is your default position slavery and not woo her with flowers and credit cards and dinner? You know,
I mean, that's such a good way to approach
I
that.
didn't enslave an entire people to live with
Well,
to be with her.
I kind of now not the slavery
Oh
part of
my
it, but
god.
I kind of get where he's coming
Oh
from
my
because
god.
when I was a kid, I always thought that's why I learned hypnotism because I thought I would never get laid. No woman would ever fucking voluntarily have sex with me. I would have to fucking trick her into it, own her, or any of that kind of stuff.
Trickery.
So,
But that's just it. He was an
Wow.
attractive man. He had women falling out of the woodworks to have sex with him.
wow,
But
wow.
when it comes to my black girlfriend, he
But
wants to
were any of
enslave
them black?
all of my people, huh?
Right.
Yeah. When it comes to
It's
a black
harder.
woman, he wants to
No,
enslave.
hang on.
Yeah.
Sisters are harder to snag. I'm going to say that straight out the gate. They're harder
But
to
still,
impress all day.
so you don't enslave an entire people just to have sex with one black woman.
No, yeah,
That's some
that's
serious.
not the
That's
way
some
to go.
serious.
That's not the way to
Yeah,
go.
that's what kings do. Okay, that's what kings do. That's what monarch. That's what
Yeah.
autocrats do.
Yeah.
That's not what people working at Comcast are supposed to do.
Wait, you said it
Technicians.
rhymed with Comcast. It was Comcast?
No, I'm sorry. It's the rhyme. I'm sorry. It rhymes with Comcast.
Oh, oh. Let's do a quick commercial. This is a really quick commercial. I think it's only 50 seconds, but let's do a quick one here. Johnson! Hecker! Looks like a bullet. A big black bullet. Or a big thick black bullet. Not so long. I wonder what that button does. Turbo. No.
That's
Turbo. Not turbo.
I'm sorry. Some of those close up,
I need
some of those
to know.
close up shots
I
look
need
like
to know.
if Star Wars was recast with an all black cast and that was like a black R2D2, you know, it's like and even come like that. It's like,
It reminds me of that scene from Austin Powers where they're reading the radar and says, "Sir, it looks like a big Johnson." That
Yeah.
Pecker. Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Just
it looks like
quick.
but it looks like now. What does that red button do? Is that like I would never push that button. I'd be afraid. Like all of a sudden, it's gonna suck your dick right off.
Well, you see how it comes apart in stages like a rocket, right? I think that's liftoff. I think that's for your countdown clock.
All right, you can click the link that's in you see right now. You know what? Let me put it in the comments so it make it clickable for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, Tracy's Dog is the place you're gonna go for your cheap sex toys. Now, inexpensive is probably a better word than cheap. They're not cheap. They're
inexpensive. Yeah, you should. Yeah, cheap's not the way. Cheap is not the word you want when purchasing sex toys, because
right, cheap is what you want.
Like,
cheap is what you want in a date.
A cheap hooker, I get an economical hooker.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, and when it comes to, because you don't want the people living in trailer parks who only have $50 system, you don't want to take their last $50 on a suck off machine. I think that's a suck off machine. That's
You
what I
know,
would call that.
I didn't.
You
Yeah,
want
no, I'm pretty sure
vacuum?
that's
What
what it
happened to your
is,
vacuum?
which is
Don't you
why I
own a
want
vacuum?
one.
Yeah.
Oh my
It,
god! Like
it,
that. You know what though? Your vacuum attachments are never the same after that. I'm just
right. Uh,
But
I'm just
I want to understand because doesn't and I could be wrong about this, but doesn't DeWalt have an attachment that you can put on one of their drills that does the same thing
probably,
for half the
probably.
price?
Are you fucking
Yeah.
serious? No, they're not.
First of all, he's
No,
never
they're
serious about any.
not.
He's
Dude,
probably never
listen, if
serious
that were
about
the
anything.
case, instruction would never get done.
Well,
You just have crews of guys out there using their fucking power tools to suck their own
I
dick.
would never want to use it after Jose just used it. Oh, I just, whatever. One guy used it. That's it. The rest of the crew is off
I'll take
working
the
and whatever.
Milwaukee. I don't want to touch that DeWalt drill. Fuck
Yeah.
that. Where's the Milwaukee at?
I would think, yeah.
Why are the batteries always? Why
Oh
are
my
the
god,
batteries
drill
always
go.
dead?
Shut
Maybe it's a
Oh
bad
my
time
god.
for this, but I
Those
was gonna
really
read.
bold.
I was gonna read the speech one paragraph at a time and try to comment on it. The dream speech, because nobody ever. A
Yeah.
lot of people know about the dream speech. Nobody really knows what it says other than "I have a dream." Maybe there's a few lines in there. Little white boys and little black boys.
Thi-
So
Are you
Well,
gonna set it up
it
like let
ends
people
with
know
the
what?
go ahead. Now you're on delay
Oh,
again, Willie.
I really like it
oh,
because it,
uh,
oh,
Go
and
ahead.
how
Go
is that
ahead.
a thing? Why
I
do I
don't know.
start good and then go? Do I need to leave and come back? You want me to do that?
No,
You want me to
no.
leave
You
and come
just
no,
need
back?
to.
it's South Dakota.
Yeah, you just need to listen a little carefully that when you're not talking over people. Just a little more carefully. Go ahead, though. You have the floor.
Okay. Oh yeah. So what I was saying is that the thing that I really like, have always really liked about the "I Have a Dream" speech is the not by where people will judge not by the color of skin, but on the content of character. You know what I mean?
That's a memorable line.
Which has been something that huh?
That's a memorable line. That's
What'd
one
you
that
say?
most people remember.
Right. Well, and it means a lot to me personally. You know what I mean? Because like how I treat people and how I would like to be treated. Because listen, bro, I got a checkered fucking past, super fucking checkered. You know what I mean? But I am not those things. You know what I mean? I'm not the person I was 20 fucking years ago. And it took a lot of character work to make that true. You know what I mean? It took me working on who I really was as a person to stop those behaviors and stop those patterns of thinking. You know what I mean? So like I really, really try and embody that as much as I can because I know how easy it is to judge somebody like me. But I
Right.
really, really hope
Now,
that people judge me not based on what my track record is, but on what my character is. You know,
now, did you work on your character doing improv? Because I know that's where like a lot of characters are developed is in improv. So when did you do improv, and when
I
and
mean,
are you
this is
still doing
like
it?
a lot like improv.
We really need some kind of remote
I do
shock
still
button
work on
for
my
him.
character quite often.
Anytime he goes down that branch of humor, we need a shock button for him. Just like I'll come up with something. All right.
FYI, in my household, my brother actually my brother was a Malcolm X guy, and I was a Martin Luther King guy. So we grew up with totally different viewpoints of Martin Luther King. And for my brother, Martin Luther King was not black enough,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
or was not pro black enough.
I or he was too nonviolent for a lot of black people. A lot of black people wanted it
Right.
here and now, and would not. His message of nonviolence and that kind of stuff did not appeal to a lot of people who were just sick and tired of it. So
Right.
let me preface this. August, well, first of all, the entire summer of 1963 was scorching heat. August 28th was the day that he gave the speech in Washington. Now, it was, I believe, 98 degrees with 90% humidity, 95% humidity, something like that. And he's standing on this stage and cooking already. So
Smoking.
set that up. So here's the very first paragraph, and I think this is a genius a bit of writing here. He starts out with five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today, Lincoln, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon of light of hope for millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in their flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to an end of a long night of their captivity. That's the first paragraph, and I think it's genius to start uh,
with a
almost
math problem.
almost paraphrasing Lincoln the four score and 20 years ago or whatever
Right.
four score and what
Right.
is it 7 years ago?
Yeah, 4 years, 4 score and 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
But and it's also bold to start off a speech with a math problem, so that people will have to go like,
Yeah. No, nobody was ever even taught what score meant, but maybe in those days. But
20
keep in
years, I
mind,
think his score actually.
at the
yeah, 20
time
years
he,
is a score.
yeah, at the
Yeah,
time he made that speech, most of the South still had white and black water fountains,
yeah.
bathrooms, that kind of stuff. A lot of people were still on plantations. They were essentially slaves. They, not even they're off the books if they were getting paid, not minimum wage, living on. They were basically still living in the same conditions without the official
Right.
term slave.
Yeah,
So
and
Right.
Maryland was a southern state, and even in some states that were not southern, like Massachusetts, they had their issues, their race, their even like Chicago, not Chicago, but Illinois, that's a state.
uh,
There were northern states that had the same issues as some of the southern states.
all the time. Now, next paragraph. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by menaces of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. Now, if you want to know how to hurt white people, tell them you're there for their money. I'm
Yeah.
here to cash a
Yeah.
check.
I
So
mean, that's true.
he
That's
knew
definitely true.
he knew that using when he goes down the monetary part of it, we're here to cash a check. He knew that was going to make a lot of people angry, but still preaching nonviolence. But it was going to incite a few people into what they're coming for our money. I told you. So that statement.
Well,
Go ahead. You got something to say about it?
well, I was going to say, that shouldn't be a shock since, I mean, America was built on the backs of those slaves. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like,
Not a shock, but it's listen, you can be not surprised but still want to protect what you got. Right? It's
right,
it's not like you're surprised when like if a home invasion you'd be surprised by it, but you understand they're there to take your stuff. Um, the part that I take umbrage with is find themselves alone on an island of poverty as if black people were the only ones to experience poverty. And it makes it white, Caucasian versus black without understanding all the other races in between
right,
or colors of people.
right.
And
And Go
I
ahead.
think I look at it a little bit differently. Not that there other races weren't poor, but they weren't on the island. They had ways off, or they had their own islands.
I mean,
Right.
It's like yeah, they're poor blacks, but they're like way the fuck over there, and they have no way of getting over here. There's no bridge. At least
right,
Native Americans have their
right.
reservations or whatever. I'm just saying that
Right.
there may have been a different,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
Now, his next paragraph, when the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed in the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Daniel Tosh has
Right.
a bit about that where he says when they were signing the Declaration of Independence, uh, he said they kind of gave each other a wink, like, we know what we mean. Uh, so,
You know what? I forgot about that bit, but I remember that now.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's fucking
It's obvious today that America has defaulted on its promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked as insufficient funds. That's now again, you're kind of really hitting at some of the insecurities, especially of the Southern plantation owners at the time. Again, keep in mind that plantations was still a thing. 1963. It's hard to kind of think of the South being as rural and plantation reliant in their economy in 1963 as it was in 1863, but pretty much that was it. So
he was
you
also using an image that people were familiar with. Like everybody back then knew about. Like now, you couldn't say that because very few people know what a check is, and very few people get a check. And even the ones who know, and even the ones that know what a check is, if it bounces, they don't get it back with a stamp that says insufficient funds. They get like an email or a text.
right.
You know,
right.
and so the imagery back then that was significant and powerful imagery because if you wrote a bad check, you got it back, they let you know
Yeah,
you would have no money in this
It's a
account.
yeah,
good point. Today you'd have to be talking about debit cards and ATMs and all that. Uh,
Right.
but
If
we
you're
refuse to.
overdrawn on your
they cut
ATM,
your
Yeah.
fucking debit card right in front of you.
We refuse to believe the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. A couple of things here. Today we have diversity, equity, and inclusion. People are all up in arms about what that means, about creating opportunities for people. The MAGA people will be quick to bring up the inequities of crime rate in poverty and in racially divided, still segregated, but segregated almost by choice areas where the crime rate of black on black is higher than the national average
Yeah,
and all
but
that kind of stuff. But wait, let me finish the point, and then you can
yeah,
comment on it. It's that in order to level the playing field about where and to be able to look at and say because the inclination is to say, well, the crime rate is higher, it must be because of their race. No, it's because of their poverty. And if you don't allow them to climb out of poverty, make some ladder for them to climb out of poverty, there is always going to be more crime, but it's not
right,
because of their skin color, it's because their fucking bank account numbers
right.
or a lack of even our bank account numbers. So
Well, not just that, but you've stolen hope.
right, but now that leads to quotas because
but that's
people do,
also a misleading statistic, though. Black on black crime is only a few percentage. There's only a few percentage points different from black on black crime and white on white crime and Asian on Asian crime because crime usually happens in places where you're familiar. You know,
Right.
so yeah, so
yeah,
so
but
it's
but the reasons for it are not racial; they are
Right.
monetary.
Yes,
And so,
absolutely. But they're comparing oranges to apples.
right. But you can't, and then that's kind of my point. You can't even start to make that comparison until the playing field of opportunity is level. Now, all these things like diversity,
Right.
equity, inclusion, and the Civil Rights Act, and all these kind of things led to quotas because we didn't trust human nature enough to change on its own. So to say that you can't discriminate based on race was not enough. You had to say, you have to hire, all things being equal, you have to hire a certain number of people, and that quota system is probably first of all, it drives more resentment and divides people in
For sure.
terms of feeling like, and this is where I got into an argument with somebody on Twitter the other day about the idea that white people are oppressed now. And that idea is firm in the minds of the MAGA people that we're oppressed. No, it's that you have to make room for everybody, and that might feel like
Right.
oppression to you. And quotas definitely help to reinforce that
Right.
idea. So there was a law firm for basically it's law firm for white power, and basically saying, have you been denied a job because you're white? Have you been denied a college admission because you're white? And they're looking to do like class action
Class
suits.
action suit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's freaking.
So
That's
I
One
think
next
of
level bananas, in my
yeah.
opinion.
one of the things one of the things illustrations I used to use for these types of discussions is, let's pretend you have a race with 8 people. I mean, not say race, I mean a competition, like a track meet. 8 people across the thing, across at the starting line. The race is 25 miles long. You shoot the gun, everybody starts, and it turns out that 2 of the people who start the race have a ball and chain on their ankle, but the other 6 people do not, and they're free to run. The other 2 people have ball and chain. They can compete, but they're carrying the ball and chain. At the 12-mile mark, or halfway through the race, they take the chains and ball and chains off of the other 2 people and go, "You're free now. Compete and catch up."
Right.
How do you rectify the fact that for the first half of that race, they, didn't have the same
Right.
opportunities as the other 6 runners? So how do
Right.
you, or what would you do to fix the race, to correct that race?
Well, here's the problem with not a problem with the argument. I get the argument, but enough did succeed even in that. So, if let's say you do that, and one of those guys, you took the ball and chain off them, and they win the race. That's all the proof we need that we've done the right thing here and given them the opportunities to succeed. And that
Yeah, I
you
mean,
can't.
that's where like when I listen to people like Morgan Freeman and stuff like that talk about race issues, like he's one of those people that doesn't necessarily believe in systematic racism, but I kind of feel like it's easy for him to not believe in it if it's something that he didn't have to buck up against all that often. Then it's not something that's as real to you, because like adversely, because I didn't grow up with these kind of things. Like it was for a long time. It was very hard for me to wrap my head around these things because I had zero personal experience with it. So like
Right.
if you don't have a personal experience with it, it's hard for you to see, but that doesn't mean that it didn't go on or that it didn't exist or any of
Right.
that thing. It just means that it didn't touch my particular life very much. and
Right.
and it's
Right.
easy to get clouded by those issues. You know what I mean?
Right. I'm going to go next paragraph because I want to get through this before the show's over. We have also
Yeah.
come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of a cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now, that's part of why the people who didn't think he was radical enough, that's a statement for them to feel like I'm not telling you to sit on your hands, but at the same
Right.
time, I'm saying don't riot and don't keep it peaceful and all
Right.
that stuff. But that's where a lot of black people in particular move away from Martin Luther King and move more towards radicalized leaders, Louis Farrakhan's or whoever of the world, who were like, no, burn down their houses. They burn crosses on our lawns, burn down their houses, and so that's where he lost or was attempting not to lose in that last paragraph. Now is the
See,
time to make.
that's where the slave masters made the mistake of teaching blacks about Christianity, because I mean not
Yeah.
Christianity, about the Bible, because it's like eye for an eye. It's
Yeah,
like, so,
Yeah.
so so
Yeah.
they're like going, oh
Yeah.
no, you
Yeah.
taught us eye for an eye, so
Yeah.
motherfucker, we're
Isn't
coming
this
for
what
your
you
eye.
said?
yeah. N- Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all God's children. Now he brings up segregation there, and I kind of alluded to this idea of voluntary segregation. There are people today making the case that forced segregation was a bad thing. And there are people, black
Right.
people and white people, both making that argument. Um, I do think there's something to that of forcing people to go someplace like busing. When I was a kid, busing was a huge issue because they were taking white kids from white neighborhoods and busing them to black neighborhoods to go to school in black neighborhoods, and they were taking black kids from black neighborhoods and sending them to white neighborhoods to kind of force us to be together. Now, like in Will's case, he didn't grow up with a lot of black people, and that might have made sense to expose him, but my area was already 50-50. I mean, well, it was 60-40, but close enough to 50. We had plenty of black people. We knew black people. We had black friends. We didn't need to have more black people bust in to make it 50-50. We knew we knew black people, and we knew their lives, and we're friends with them. So that forced segregation, I think, made a lot of people bitter too. I don't know if it can really, because you talk about like the Beverly Hills black guys, and in the beginning, it was almost all white people, and one person moved in. It had to be hard for both parts. First of all, you're not wanted in that neighborhood, and the area was not shy about letting you know we don't want your kind here.
Right.
But then the people you left behind from your old neighborhood are resentful from you. Oh, look, what are you?
Right. Right. Oh, look
Yeah,
at you going and living in the ritzy. Yeah. 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 Sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
and that was me. That was, and I didn't ask. I didn't ask my mother to move. My mother moved to Columbia, Maryland from Baltimore City because she thought she was saving my life. You know,
yeah,
or
uh,
actually, technically, okay, that's the bullshit line. That's the line that she told me that she was doing it to save my life. She was doing it because my mother was a little highfalutin, a little uppity, and her sister moved to Columbia, and so she wanted to be in Columbia too, plain and simple.
right,
But I was upset, and I said, "Mom, I don't want to leave my friends." She goes, "This is for the greater good. This is for you, my son, so you don't get in trouble."
right. I want to read two paragraphs to just try to speed things up here and get through this. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of this moment. The sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negro ended needed to blow off steam and will now be content, will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. That sounds like a threat of violence, but he kind of follows that up with, there will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. So it starts out sounding like a threat, ends up sounding more like a promise that you're not going to be able to avoid violence if you don't open up to this change.
Right.
But
Well, and
I just a
isn't
little bit
that
more here.
what the? Go ahead.
But there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold, which leads into a palace of justice. In this process of gaining a rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. So it starts out sounding like a threat, becomes more of a promise, and then he tells black people basically, don't riot. It's a tough thing to get through because you're getting people worked up, you're getting them angry, and then saying, "I know you're angry, but just be calm." It's a really, I don't know if this part of the speech, would not fall on deaf ears if it were given
Well,
now.
but do you think that maybe he understood that to up the level of violence was only going to increase the man's like oppression, like the more violent their call for justice is, the more likely the people against them are gonna just do the best they can to quell them entirely and put out their fire.
No doubt,
You
I
know
think
what I
that's
mean?
exactly what he was saying. But
Right.
consider that there were a lot of people who were ready for race war at the time, and that's also what he
Right.
was saying.
But
And go ahead.
like I kind of want to equate this a little bit to I forget what the name of the special. I think it's like 847 or something like that. The Dave Chappelle special that he came out with like three specials ago or whatever. It was like he called the special whatever the time was
George
that they
Floyd
kneeled
thing,
on George Floyd. Yeah.
right?
I think it was like 847 or something like that.
Right.
But his final remarks in that special were very I don't want to say telling, but like you know almost in a reverse action of what this speech is saying, of like, listen, like we've been saying that this is a problem for a long time and you're still not fucking listening. So
Yeah.
God help the day where because no justice, no peace, the whole that whole movement is really meant, what's meant behind that phrase in particular, no justice, no peace. Until we get justice as a fucking people, you're not going to know what fucking peace is. You know what I mean?
There's a big risk in that, and sounding like you're not just predicting what the future will be, but endorsing violence.
Right,
There's
and
a
that's
fine line. I think he was,
right.
and I don't know. I don't know Chappelle's mind.
Well, I don't know if you listen the last 30 seconds to that fucking special, because I
I
mean
know the
he
lines
pretty
you're talking
much,
about.
yeah,
Yeah.
he pretty
So
much
I'm the only one here who
puts
hasn't
it
seen
in
that special.
perspective. Oh
I
yeah,
think
he pretty
I
much
think
puts it in perspective. Go ahead.
I think that's when we lost Dave Chappelle to the comedy world, and he became Professor Chappelle, because he had not.
I mean, that does seem to be, in my mind, that was definitely the turning point. That was
Right.
definitely the turning point where he stopped doing comedy and he just started doing social dissertations, basically.
Right. And it feels very weird that I have a banner scrolling across about cheap sex toys while we're trying to have this conversation.
Cost effective sex toys.
Yeah, but it says cheap sex toys right in the link there, I think, right?
Does it really? That's not helping us. That's not helping us.
Collections, cheap sex toys, yes. with a
What the
question.
fuck? Who markets themselves that way?
Mr.
I
Geronimo.
thought I was bad at marketing myself.
Mr.
Jesus.
Geronimo markets that way. Now I'm almost.
Grace to
I
go.
think we're going to get through this
Yeehaw.
before we say goodbye to Gov. So let me just keep rolling through here. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has now engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people, for many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize their destiny is tied with our destiny, which seems to be a uniting thing. But again, I think he alienated a segment of the black community who was with him up until he started saying that. Like, wait a minute, wait a minute. Are we
Yeah.
it's human nature to say, I've had enough. How much longer do I have to play Jackie Robinson and let them just say what they will about me and not say anything back, or not give anything back? And
Right.
so there were a lot of people who just like were losing patience at that point. I think this is a desperate plea to tell those people, please remain patient. But it wasn't happening. Again, in my neck of the woods, race riots began shortly after that and were like a routine thing. And even friend against friend, if you knew somebody, you had black friends, but there was a fight between, and how these things got organized. I never fucking figured that out. But yeah, we're gonna meet on the school, the athletic field, and have a fight, and everybody bring weapons and line up. And you'd see people you were in class with, you were friends with, you spent time in the lunchroom with, you played games with. Now all of a sudden they're on the other side. It was really a crazy time, but that was going on a lot then.
And you
Um,
talk about organizing. Just imagine uh, Martin Luther King and them organizing a march with thousands and thousands of people. No internet, shoes, no comfortable shoes. But they're going to meet and march. You know,
yeah.
just saying.
Yeah. Next paragraph. And they have come, meaning white people, and they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking for the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels or of the highways and the hotels of the cities. So again, he's talking about things that people of today's generation probably can't wrap their head around. That even then, Sammy Davis Jr. in 1963 could not walk in the front door of a hotel he was staying at with Frank Sinatra, or Frank Sinatra was one of the guys who stood up for him and said, basically, he walks through the front
Right.
door, we don't walk through the front door. But there was
Bill
that going.
Russell,
Yeah,
Bill Russell with the Celtics, same thing. There's some hotels that they could not be in because they had black players.
right. And it didn't go away in 1963, by the way. It's still going on 10
No.
years later. And so it's hard for people like Will's age, or even older than him, to wrap their head around the idea that this was a reality in my lifetime. I was,
Right.
and GT was around in this, in during this time when this was happening. It just, because it seems like the distant past. If you are 30 years old right now, 1963 might as well be 1863. So they can't
I
really.
I, I want to say, well, this is probably like in the late '90s. Yeah, probably the late '90s. I was helping a friend of mine move to Texas, and we had the moving van, so we stopped in Arkansas as one of the nights to spend the night there, and we stayed at this really nice hotel. I go down to the pool, and I'm the only black person out there. I get in the pool. Every white person, which is everybody, gets out of the pool. Then my friend, who is white, When he comes down, he's like comes down 5 minutes later, and he sees I'm the only one in the pool. He looked at me and he goes, "What happened?" And I said, "I got in the pool. They all got out." So he gets in the pool next to me and goes, "Great, we get the whole pool to ourselves."
Yeah.
Right.
Except
Right.
Except there was a picture on Twitter the other day, not Twitter, it might have been Facebook, where history and photographs. It was from 1968. A white hotel owner had black people in his pool, and they would not get out of the pool, so he was pouring muriatic acid in the water.
Damn.
Yeah, 1968.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's insane. And again, young people can't wrap their head around 1968. But believe me, it wasn't that long ago. I remember it like it was yesterday. Uh,
Yeah.
Right.
we cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating "for whites only." Again, this is
Right.
1963. You probably, if you're a younger person, you're probably saying, I never saw that sign. It's not real to me. It might as well be 1865 or whatever. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. That is still a problem. They are. If you
Right.
think that problem has
Because
gone away, yeah, go ahead.
right, because what he's saying there is like it's not enough just to say that you can vote. Like does your is your vote affecting change for your life? You know what I mean? Like if the politicians you vote in still won't do anything that's representative of you, what the fuck does your vote even matter? You know what I
Right.
mean? If you don't have access to politicians that'll put through legislation that's in your fucking favor.
Right. And, they are trying to redraw lines, constantly trying to redraw district lines to make it harder for minority votes to count, constantly.
Yeah, to
This is still an
matter. Yeah,
issue,
to
trying to,
yeah,
disenfranchise
definitely.
people. It's hard for white people because, and I don't have any white guilt. This idea of white guilt, I am not part of this. I've lived my life in a way that I feel proud that I've voiced whatever limited tiny bit of power I have against this system. So I don't have any white guilt, but there are people, bleeding heart liberals and conservatives alike, who that kind of thinking makes them feel guilty about being born white, and feels
Right,
like, well, I didn't, and the rationalization is, I didn't do this, so I don't have to do anything to help fix it, or even talk about it, or even acknowledge it. So, and that's where white guilt becomes a dangerous thing, where it keeps you from acknowledging and wanting to deal with the issue. And in that way, you enable the people who are redrawing district lines and
yes.
voter ID and all that kind of stuff. It's just crazy.
And
Uh,
I will say that like when we don't say shit, when we don't pipe up and speak out when we feel like things are wrong, we are doing a disservice to
right.
ourselves and to the whole fucking cause. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like because that's something that I try and be mindful of is I need to be a voice that is supportive, that doesn't shy away or shrink down when those challenges present themselves, because
Right.
I think it's very important to be a voice that speaks out against tyranny, no matter what that tyranny looks like. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I think it's super important. But at the same time, that's also why I'll in the same token, I don't really go along with this reverse racism stuff or whatever. You know what I mean? Like because there's, you know, it should be about being good to people. Period. You know what I
Right.
mean? Whether you're white, black, brown, whatever. Like just be good to people. Treat people well. You know what I mean? And if that's not happening, fucking say something. Fucking
Well,
say something.
again,
It's not that
yeah,
hard.
the issue you're talking comes back to: do we trust human nature? And the answer pretty much is no. But let me just keep going because I want to get through this before we
We're almost
have
there.
to. And we're almost, and we're probably about 3/4 of the way, or about maybe 2/3 of the way. No, no, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down the waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to make work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. I don't agree with that. Go back to Mississippi, go back to Alabama, go back to South Carolina, go back to Georgia, go back to Louisiana, go back to the slums and the ghettos of your northern cities, knowing that somehow the situation can and will be changed. The part about suffering being redemptive, I don't think there's any nobility in accepting suffering or thinking that because I went through this, you have to be a religious person, and I know he was.
Right, right. That's a religious thing. That's not a practical thing.
Humanity is not like that. We don't reward. We don't say, "Oh," as humanity, we don't say, "Oh, you suffered. Well, we're gonna reward you for your
I
suffering."
mean,
That's just
I disagree. I disagree. We definitely do that. Okay, case in point, a POW survivor.
right.
Okay, like, do you not think that they're held up even more, even though someone else may have served, like a POW, someone that was a POW, they're going to get held up in a higher regard because they suffered. Not only did they go and they served, but they also suffered. So now we're
That's
gonna
a
Have you
go
not have
and
you not listened have you not listened to the MAGA group and how they talk about John McCain?
yeah. Well, Willie, that I'm sorry. That's somebody who has not lived it. The POWs who came back from Vietnam were vilified. They were left to be homeless. They were left on the streets. They did not receive any special treatment or any special reward for what they went through. Not in the least. In
That's good.
words, not in deed. We
right. Well,
honor
and
the PO, and we came up with
okay,
flags. We did not do anything for them, not in the least. They were not rewarded for the
right.
suffering they went through.
So okay, so while it may not have amounted to much, at least in lip service, they were given a little bit more. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah,
Like
but
that.
lip service.
Um, I mean, isn't that what a lot of this has been so far, though? I mean, it's been pretty fucking worthless for the most part because a lot of it has been just lip service. And that's why
Right,
we're
but that's
still
not
in
that's not a
the
reward for
situations
you.
we're in.
That's not a reward for your suffering. You talk to a guy who
True.
who had he basically got his legs cut off, and well, how do you think the lip service was a reward? I don't think I don't think you'd get a friendly response to that.
No, you probably wouldn't. But like okay, how I've talked to service members that are annoyed by people that thank them for their service. Like if you find out somebody's served in the military and then and it's usually some old white lady, oh thank you for your service. Like I've talked to service members that are annoyed by that, but it's still like to that particular person, it's that person's way of lifting them up and thinking, but it's just the lip service. It doesn't really offer much help or aid or
Right. Well,
whatever. But
that's really what we're talking about. He's
right.
and this you're not rewarded. Sam Stone came home from a conflict overseas. He ended up all he got was a flag and a grave on Boot Hill, and that's it. I mean, basically, you don't get rewarded for your suffering. This is not how humanity works. Churches work like that. Religions work like
Right.
that. Humanity does not say, Oh, I'm sorry for your suffering. Let me get you a nice mansion on the hill because you suffered. No,
Yeah,
you still have to put up with the system, and no matter what you've gone through that has pushed you back or put that ball and chain on you for the first half of the race, you're still gonna have to deal with that. And we're not giving you any uh, head start. We're not giving. You don't get that. You
right.
suffered. That's it. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair, say to you today, my friends. So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Again, with a little wink, we know what we mean. I have a dream that one day the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day have a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, by the content, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. Now, just coming back, and that's the line that Willie brought up before, the content of their character, a very memorable line. But the part of I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering from the heat of injustice. Keep in mind, this was 4 years before Mississippi burning, 5 years before Mississippi burning. So nothing in Mississippi had changed at all because of this speech. Because 5 years later, we were still having the Ku Klux Klan running sheriff's departments in towns and killing college students and covering it up, and the FBI basically having a wall of not it's not a blue wall, it's a white wall of just people that were still trying to bring back the 1860s in 1963. 1968 when Mississippi burning happened. So that was a dream. His dream did not uh, and there's a little more here. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racist, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of in interposition and nullification, one day right down in Alabama, little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with the little white boys and little white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. Getting really close to the end here, so I'm just going to keep going. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. There's 3 more paragraphs, and I'm going to get through them really quick. This will be the day that that all of God's children will be able to sing with a new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, and of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land where the pilgrims pride, from every mountainside let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. Not only that, let freedom ring from the Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill, every molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. And when this happens, and when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village, from every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics will be able to join hands and sing the words of the old Negro spiritually, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. I am here to tell you that's the end of the speech. I think.
And Mind Dog Coffee, free at last, free at last. Use promo code Iowa Caucus -24 and 24.
Use use promo code GD. Is just kidding. Just kidding.
I will say, if I sing a Negro spiritual, I'm pretty sure I'm canceled.
Yeah. No, you should try that. Can you do that on Star Maker? Yeah.
I bet you there are some Negro spirituals available to sing on Star Maker. I'm sure there are.
I'm certain they are. Isn't Will the Circle Be Unbroken a Negro spiritual? I believe it was.
Yeah,
it just got adopted by a lot of white people down there. But
right. So my wife and I just watched Bringing Down the House the other day, which is a Steve Martin, Queen Latifah movie. I think it came out in like the early 2000s or something like that. I always love watching that movie because it reminds me of Wife Number One, because Wife Number One was a carbon copy of Queen Latifah's character in that movie. But there's an old rich white lady in that movie who starts singing. Huh?
Your first wife, did she look like Queen Latifah? Was she a black woman also of some substance?
Yeah. No. So my first wife is black, and her character in Bringing Down the House was like when I say a carbon copy, bro. The part where she spends the first night at Steve Martin's house, and then the next morning he goes to wake her up, and he goes to wake her up, and he's in striking distance, and she ends up knocking him the fuck out, like, who that? Just swinging out of her sleep. I'm like, oh my God, that's wife number one all fucking day. I married, my first wife was a very ghetto-fied woman, and she was quite scary. I mean, honestly.
I think the speech was a poetry and inspiring to a lot of people, but I do think we failed. That dream did not come true. When you talk about police brutality, now police brutality is a tricky thing because it's almost impossible to be a cop and not be constantly aware of, at least in the back of your mind, that you are the enemy to a lot of people. A lot of people want to hurt you. They want to do bad things. And when you find somebody resisting arrest, the natural human response is to react with violence. If that person happens to be a person of color and there's somebody with a camera around, you're going to lose your career. You're going to end up, and I'm not justifying it in any way, but I'm trying to how difficult it is to kind of be mindful of that, and how if you are truly going to be, because there was a I know I'm all over the place here. I'm doing a Willie. I'm changing course right in the middle of a sentence. But there was a video I saw the other day. A black woman who was arrested. She was already in handcuffs. Cop is walking with her, and she starts kicking the cop and trying to make him trip. And the cop just had enough, and he slammed her down on the concrete really hard. And the question was, is this justified? In my mind, it was. But there is no doubt that there will be an uprising towards that cop for that he will have to face an inquisition. He might lose his job over that. So it's a really difficult thing. But police brutality still exists, and I talked about the situation where I got pulled over with a joint at 54 years old. And the cop took my weed, but ended up giving it back to me with my license. And said, after I lied to him and all that, and I was like, if I were a black guy, I'd probably be in jail for the rest of my life over that, because I had a half ounce of weed on me. I lied to the guy about it, and he would have took me to court. I would have probably, if I were black, I would have probably been sentenced for that. and then probably committed more crimes behind bars and would have spent more time behind. But for me, being a white guy, a middle-aged white guy, is like, here's your weed back. Have a nice day. So that definitely exists without a doubt. But and that is the biggest part of the BLM movement is the idea of police brutality still existing. So in that respect, I'm saying that Martin Luther King's dream,
Right.
it was just it was just that, just a dream. It
It's
wasn't real.
pretty shot. Yeah.
Where I live, like there's a number of black people. Actually, I live in a smaller town that I live right now. 3 years ago, I lived in a smaller town, and it's It was called Tawny Town. No, it is still called Tawny Town. It's named after the Supreme Court Justice Robert